Welcome to Podula Rasa. I'm David Blank.
And I'm Jim Esch.
This is a podcast about finding something in nothing.
Have you ever seen the film Citizen Kane, the story of Charles Foster Kane, the media mogul, directed by Orson Welles? The whole plot of that film revolves around people's interpretations of his life, the essence of the man, who he was, what made him tick. And whether it's friends, enemies, co-workers, wives, mistresses, everyone had a story to tell. Please join us as we take some steps into the life of an inspiring and influential teacher, Thom Williams. He was the cool English teacher. You'll hear some memories from me, Dave, and our old bandmate, Jim Morris.
Where the heck do I start? I've been thinking about this podcast since before there was a Podula Rasa podcast. In a way, Thom Williams was the reason for it all. My friendship with Jim, my friendship with so many others, my memories of a time long ago since faded into a past where meanings are now lost. Why am I driven to do this? I got to speak with Meg, his wife, and since then I've been around and around and around the idea of how to approach this podcast, how to make it mean something. I'm still no closer to the answer to that question than before. So, it seems the only way to escape the wheel is to look for a skip in the record and launch. Where? Doesn't matter. It's likely to go somewhere good. Who was Thom Williams? How do you talk about a person who has meant so very much to you, and yet, in many ways, you didn't really know them at all? It's sort of like when you fall in love with someone, and at some point you realize that you fell in love with the idea of that person. And the them you're sleeping with is nothing like the image of the caption in your head. It doesn't feel like that. Have I just collected memories over the past 56 years, and I'm finally opening the drawer to feel them again? Not really. There's always been an idea of this time in the past, lurking in my present. So very many people who I have personal first-hand knowledge of think this guy, Thom Williams, was an inspiration, a friend, a mentor, a hero, you name it.
He was like everybody's like hero at high school. He was he was cool. He had like a long hair and a beard, and he liked rock and roll, and he played guitar, and he taught like crazy weird English classes about Richard Brautigan, and he ran a literary magazine.
He said it himself on a YouTube video, Rules to Live By, posted by Lauren Allen.
I've been lucky my whole life. People have had me on a pedestal, so like I'm this special person and stuff. But when I find somebody who's loyal, really loyal, I look up to that person. I'd like to be like you.
When I think about that, I wonder if I failed him in the loyalty department. This guy who was this funny teacher in high school, somebody I really looked up to, somebody I had a fleeting friendship with later in life. After losing track for 25 years, when he asked me to grab fate by the wing-wang and be friends, why didn't I? Was I so busy? Just 5 short years later, that chance would be lost forever. So I guess my goal is to start the conversation and see where it goes. What makes this person one of those people who sit in the rafters of my personal pantheon? The others are so much more easy to define. What made him him? What is it that I want to incorporate from this person into my present? So I'd like to ask Jim. After graduation in 1982, I saw Thom a few times, both at the high school and at his place on South Church Ave in Westchester. Then we lost touch, or I lost touch. He was still there. Did you stay in touch with him over the years that followed?
I did not stay in close touch with Thom Williams. There was a little period when I was in college where we did connect. Thom lived right off campus, and one day he had us over to his apartment.
We were like planning our future when we were going to take over the world as like rock stars.
Because he was kind of producing us. Like when we were Joe, Jim and I was like, the band was Joe. We would like give Thom our tapes. We stopped in to see him, and he goes, "It's Joe!" Like the band.
I was just kind of blown away to be, at the living quarters of this man who I idolized in high school and who we had played with, jammed with a little bit in the Zeus and the Druids phase, and encouraging us in our songwriting.
And for one of them, Joe too, he wrote this critique. He wrote on 5x7 cards for every song. He wrote like this little handwritten a critique of every song. And it was like, there was one song, it was one of Jim's songs. He wrote like, he just drew a picture of money bags next to it. Like this is the hit. And I think one of the songs where I sang, like Jim and I would, on that tape, Jim and I kind of traded off vocals a lot. Where he said like, they were just like kind of fragmented comments. And one was like, Jim sounds like Abraham Lincoln. Talking about me.
And he was going to send this demo to his agent. It was all a little bit overwhelming, frankly. I just remember that one time, and I guess nothing really became of that demo that he worked up on his 4-track. And one thing led to another, and we never saw him again. And I moved on and so forth. And then many years later, I did get back in touch with him, and I'm not sure exactly how this, the internet happened. And I sort of was vaguely aware that Thom had released some CDs on CD Baby. Maybe you told me about it, Dave.
CD Baby. He told me about that when we talked in 2005. He said, I got some releases, you should go check them out. Of course, I didn't until after he was gone. But I think I bought every one of the last ones. I have a whole bunch of them now. I sent one to you at some point. And then I thought better about it. I think it was Lady Macbeth. And after I sent it to you, I thought, I really want to get that one too. And of course, they were gone. But you shared it with me, and so that's cool. It's out there. It's in the universe.
But at some point, and I think it may have been when Facebook got started, or it could have been by email, but we did reconnect. And I think I wanted to get in touch with him because I had just recently started teaching creative writing at the college level. And once I knew he was out there and I either had his email address or the Facebook connection, I wanted to let him know that and to tell him how much he had meant to me and how inspirational he was. And I don't remember the actual words I used, but I did try to convey that gratitude. And he was very nice and kind. He remembered me, and he kind of said something to the effect was like, I always knew you were that kind of weird oddball type of guy who would end up doing stuff like that. And then I would say only maybe 6 months, 8 months after that sort of brief exchange, he passed away. And then I got the word about that. So a lot of years went by when we were not in touch, but his presence, I think, was always there. The memories were so strong, the influence that he had. It maybe was more of an inspiration than an influence, if you know what the difference is, and we can maybe explore that. But to me, inspiration is someone who started at the beginning They're at the beginning, and they light that fire. That spark goes off. They sort of kindle something in you, and then you sort of burn, and the light comes out, the warmth, the heat, and that he was that for me. He choose your metaphor. Light the fire, opening up windows and doors. That's what he did, and he was so supportive. Just by being who he was, and kids in high school need that so desperately, and I'm just thankful he was there to play that role. I'm kind of wondering, Dave, if you could characterize the influence that Thom had on you, or the ways that he inspired you. Do you even see distinction between those two terms, inspiration and influence?
Gosh, inspiration, and I would say that the first time that I met him in the hallways of MN, probably in '79, I was inspired. I was determined to get into his class. I just thought here was the coolest guy. I had a lot of good teachers actually at MN, but this guy in particular, I thought, I immediately liked him, like most people, I guess. It's interesting to me that you connected with him and you died, and then he died. I had a similar experience with that, and maybe that's what's driving me. Another guy who I idolized in a way, and who was extremely supportive to me over the last 30 years in the area of the sciences, recently died this past March, and I got to tell him. I think he always knew, but back in December, I sent him a card and I sent him some gifts, and I just, I said thank you. You always were so supportive of me, and I really appreciate that. And I know he got it because we talked a few times after that, but then he died, and I thought, I guess maybe it resonated with me because I thought I'd never really gotten to tell Thom that he had that effect on me. I guess when you're younger, you think everyone's going to live forever, even though you know that they don't. So, do you remember the first time that you met him, that you saw him? And I guess I would also ask this to other people who are listening to this podcast, because we really want to continue with this theme and try to flesh this out and kind of enjoy the memory.
Yeah, I do have some memories, early memories of first encounters with him. Not always vivid, but I do remember wanting to take his creative writing class, and the word was out that he was the cool teacher. He looked cool, he was cool, and it seemed like a lot of fun, and creative writing was what I wanted to do with my life, so I was all in. And I remember the first day of class, must have been the first day, he came in and he had the vest. Everyone remembers the vest, the long hair, the beard. Yeah, I always thought he looked like Jesus Christ, but if Jesus Christ was a linebacker, that's what Thom Williams looked like. He had this burly build, and but he had the long hair and the beard and a kind of glint in his eye. But what I remember from that first day or first week of creative writing is he started with haiku, and he wrote this haiku on the board, and it was by Basho, the haiku master in Japan. And I wrote this in my creative writing notebook, which I still have. I'm staring at it right now. And I wrote this on the inside cover of the book. And I'll read it for you. This is what Thom wrote on the board. Sick, on a journey, yet over withered fields, dreams wander on. So he opened the class with Basho's deathbed poem. Yeah, you knew you were in for something brand new with this guy. So that kind of blew me away, and he introduced us to haiku, to Richard Brautigan, like Jim said, and like I said before, the inspiration was so strong. And in a lot of ways, it validated my interests. The fact that this cool guy, this fun, cool, interesting guy, he was the demonstration that the kind of thing I wanted to do with my life could be done. There was the evidence standing at the front of that room. So, like I said before, just the fact that he was who he was, that presence always stuck with me, and it opened up all these possibilities. I didn't always realize those possibilities. My life hasn't been a total success. I mean, far from it. But that spirit of creativity, of inspiration, of doing your thing, right? That was my takeaway from him. So, every day in that class was just, you never knew what was going to happen. It was just, he was just this brilliant, sort of unpredictable light.
I got a call from Kevin from Show 2 one day from a parent-teacher conference that he was having with his son, with Tom. Blew me away. He just picked up the phone. Hey, Dave, it's Kev. You'll never guess where I am. And I said, you're right. I'll never guess where you are. And in the back, I heard, hey, 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 hey. And I was like, oh, my God. It was so nice to hear that voice after so long. Blew me away. And so here I am now, 15 years later.
He was on Facebook for a little bit. That's why I feel like I was able, tell him that, how much he meant and stuff like that. But I don't think we knew he was sick yet. But he'd pop up once in a while and say something, yeah. But then he had a site for like the Poet's I Ching or something like that.
That's still up.
It is.
It's still up. You can, but that's the only thing you can find of him. Like, I know he's published things, and I know Ted had some stuff that he said he has a book that he published, like the actual book. But you can't find. I can't find it anywhere now. I wonder if it's because there are several Thomas Williamses who are authors. And how do you know?
You need a librarian.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm putting you on the task. We got to find some stuff dig some stuff out somewhere, because it's like, if somebody can put Zeus and the Druids on video on from 38 years ago, then Thom Williams has got to be. It's only been 10 years. He's got to be there somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll close with a quick story. After I got word that Mr. Williams had died, and that was over the winter break. What was it, 10 years ago? I was teaching creative writing in the spring semester, So that cold January morning, I walked into my classroom, which was in the literal worst classroom on campus, in the basement of a grungy dorm building on the back side, facing the railroad tracks and I-95, when you could hear all the road noise and the freight trains. Bars on the window, stains on the rug, and wires dangling out of the drop ceiling, which had incomplete tiling up there. A very reticent class, not talking to one another, eyeing me with suspicion. And I look out the window where the bars are, and there was fencing out there as well, like kind of over top of some kind of an electrical unit. And there was a hawk, a giant hawk, clinging to that fence, staring through the bars into the classroom at me. And I turned to the class. This was before we officially started. I pointed to the window and I said, "Look, there's a hawk. Check that out. Is that the coolest thing or what?" And they looked over. Got no response. But I stared at that hawk. The hawk stared at me. Had a very severe look on his face. But also, I totally felt like this hawk was my spirit guide. And I couldn't help but think of Thom Williams, sort of giving me the eye and saying, "You'll be all right. You'll be all right. Just keep doing your thing. Keep doing your thing." I went ahead. I taught the class. I got over my nerves. And here I am. I'm still doing my thing. That's my hawk story.
I'd like to close by asking people who knew Thom to send this podcast to others out there, disciples of T. Will, anybody, and ask them to please send us ideas for how we can further explore who this guy was, so that maybe in some way we can all figure it out. If you could write to us at padularasa@gmail.com, and we could read it on a future podcast, or we could interview you. If you have other ideas, please send them along.
I wanted to give credit to the music that you heard in the podcast here. The first two tracks were by Thom Williams himself. He was such a great guitar player. The first was an unpublished tape made in 1983 or 1984 in Thom's home studio on South Church Avenue in Westchester, Pennsylvania. The second track is from his album Lady Mac, or Lady Macbeth. And that CD, I don't have a year that came out, but it's out of print. The track is called Kiss the Fool. The third piece you heard was played by our very own Dave Blank on acoustic guitar. Thanks so much for listening. Please keep in touch. Drop us an email, and we hope you'll tune in again very soon.